For over 70 years, British comedy has woven itself into the fabric of our national consciousness, creating stars and helping to shape the universal television viewing experience. Comedy can be as diverse and wide-ranging as life itself, and British comedy's rich landscape epitomizes this. So please, don't adjust your set. We'll take it from here if you're not being served, as we explore the wide-ranging and often bizarre world of British comedy with some of its best-loved stars exclusively on Beyond the Title.
There we go. Right, so Joe Cornish, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Title. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be there virtually.
So we'll start off with the questions Josh has prepared. So one of the striking things that came out of our chat with Adam Buxton was that you astonishingly began your career as a film reviewer for LBC. What sort of grounding did this offer you?
Yeah, did he told you that, did he?
Yeah.
Did he? When I was like a teen, because I grew up in London, I listened to a station called Capital Radio a lot. And in the 80s, they had a Saturday morning show where kids reviewed films. And I also listened to LBC a lot in the 80s. And in the 80s, LBC was much less sort of provocative and talk radio-y. It was a lot more friendly and had all these crazy late night phone-ins and stuff. And they had a Saturday morning kids pop culture show as well. So in my teens, with my friend Mark Nike, we discovered that if we went to their offices, you could get like preview tickets for films and you could get involved. So we would hang out in the Capital Radio foyer and we would go into LBC and get free stickers and say, hey, can we do anything for you? And we ended up on this review show on a Saturday morning. And I went to see the movie The Beastmaster. Have you ever seen The Beastmaster? Quite a good movie, but about a muscly man who can talk to animals like lions and tigers and stuff. We went to a preview of that. We went to a preview of a film called Bullshot. Well, he's done it again. He saved the human race, which is another weird 80s comedy. And then we also discovered this world of Sunday morning sneak previews in Leicester Square. We discovered that at about 11 a.m., I don't know whether they do this still, but in all the big cinemas in Leicester Square, they would preview movies for and that if you could get tickets from radio stations, but if you turned up and just said, hello, I forgot my ticket, they'd let you in. So I remember seeing Gremlins like months and months before it came out, and just sneaking our way in. So yeah, that was a bit of a scene. And yeah, then I ended up on a couple of radio shows, with a very posh, squeaky, high voice. I've got some cassettes of them somewhere, but I sound so posh that I don't want to release them to the public. I sound a little bit like sort of junior Margaret Thatcher reviewing things. Everyone was posher in those days, especially when you went on the radio, you put on your posh voice. Anyway, so yeah, that's sort of true, but I wouldn't. Did it start my career? Maybe it did. Maybe it made me comfortable in front of a microphone. I can go on actually. There was one day we went into LBC, and there were some naughty boys in there. They'd let in some ruffians, and they went in, and we were waiting for our show. It was presented by a guy called Tommy Boyd. It was called Pillow Talk or something. It was a bit weird for a kids' chat show. Anyway, we all had pillows, and we put them on the desks and sat on them. Maybe it was called Cushion Talk. I can't remember. Anyway, the show was about to start, and these naughty boys pushed their way into one of the sound booths, and they started fucking with the dials, and they basically got themselves on air and started going fuck, shit, fuck, like this. And they basically cut into the live broadcast with juvenile swearing.
Oh, wow.
And the management came down and kicked them out. Heady days. Heady, exciting days.
Wow.
Was
Was it live?
Yeah, it was live. The swearing went out live. Yeah. And yeah, all those shows were live. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were. Yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking.
Wow. Right. Let's go back to the start. You met Adam Buxton at the independent school in Westminster. What were your
Mm.
first impressions of him?
Well, the school was called Westminster. It was an independent school. We were very lucky. Our parents were not that well off, but my parents and Adam's parents, basically spent all their money sending us to this school. And I met Adam in the playground. He had like a pudding bowl haircut. He had one of those, kids in those days, some of them would have school bags that were like industrial briefcases,
Oh,
as
yeah.
if they thought someone was going to machine gun their homework on the way to work. He had one of those really intense, like industrial snapshot metal. In my memory, it's metal briefcases, and he had a very glossy pudding bowl haircut with a sort of sexy quiff that he would toss around. And we were both fans of Not the 9 O'Clock News,
Hmm.
and we'd both seen a sketch where I think Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones are pretending to be Russian spies, and they meet each other in the forest, and they say, "The eagle flies south for the winter," or something. They have all these bizarre abstract phrases,
Hmm.
coded phrases that they greet each other with. Can't remember what the joke was, but we did that. We basically, whenever we saw each other in the playground, we would say these weird lines as if we were Russian spies. And then we discovered we were both into the Thompson twins, and you know, that was it. It was the romance began.
It's it's interesting how you came from a film background but have a rich legacy in TV comedy. What do you think are the parallels between comedy and action films?
Between comedy and action films.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something about the structure of a joke that's the same as the structure of a beat, as they call them in a film. And so I think the first thing is that a lot of people come up through comedy because comedy's provable. It's either funny or it isn't.
Yeah.
Some people might say that our so-called comedy isn't very funny, but as long as enough people laugh at it, you've got something and it's instantly provable. So the
Yeah.
thing about film is certainly commercial film, it's got to entertain an audience and kind of actually work. Successful films by and large tend to work. There's sort of abstract arty films that work on a big enough that are super cheap, and
Yeah.
that maybe small amounts of people like. But if you're going to make a big movie that really connects with audiences, it's got to kind of work. And in comedy, it's got to work. Otherwise, the audience don't come really. So, I mean, Adam and I were sort of lucky as we went straight into TV. We didn't do any stand-up. So when I say our stuff works, we never really proved it in front of an actual live audience. But you know what I mean? It's a sort of thing where you've got to have a setup and a twist. So, and I can think of, Edgar Wright, who I work with, came up through comedy as well. Like lots of people who have been, relatively successful in making commercial film come up through comedy because you really have to think about your audience and you have to think about how to make things effective, and you got to entertain as well. You can't be too self-indulgent, really. Um, is that a good enough answer? I've sort of forgotten what the question was.
Well, well,
Yeah.
always was you excellent uh, tweet who for only more 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 in and to you is from the main development.
So when he was at uni, everyone was a massive film buff, whereas Josh was much more into TV. What was that last bit? Do you think it's important to make that divide?
Yeah.
I do, yeah. When I was at college, I was very lazy and I smoked too much weed and I watched a lot of Neighbours and like afternoon soap operas, but yet I was obsessed with film. And I used to think, like, what is the difference between TV and film? What's the difference between an episode of Neighbours and a movie? And it kind of used to obsess me a bit. And plus when I was that age and I was flicking through the channels, I could always tell when it was a movie and when it was TV. It was slightly sometimes to do with the picture quality, but there's lots of things that make a movie and TV a TV, right? TV a TV show. So it's to do with the production value.
Yeah.
It's to do with the fact that a movie ends. It's the length of the scenes. It's the number of times it changes location. It's often less dialogue based and more visual storytelling. So there's all these things that movies can do that TV can't do, really.
Yeah.
The divide is becoming a little narrower now that people spend so much money on streaming shows. But I really like things that end, you know? I like a movie that ends and I like to leave the cinema and think about it knowing that I've seen it all. I've seen the beginning, the middle, and the end of what the author and the makers intended, which is a rarer thing now that everything is episodic and everything's a sequel. Um, so yeah, so I used to think about that a lot, and uh, but then again, yeah, there's lots of people who started in British comedy who try and make the transition to the big screen, and it doesn't really work, right? There's loads of, and they're kind of fantastic, but there's loads of weird movies like Kenny Everett, Morecambe and Wise, or British sitcoms that make a movie. You know, the what is it? The what's the one where they go on the hotel on holiday? You know, they always choose like a bigger.
You mean
Are you being served?
That's right. Are you being served? Yeah. Like there's a George and Mildred movie, isn't there? There's like and there's like Morons from Outer Space and like all these like weird, quirky
yeah,
attempts to translate to the big screen that don't really work because they're not necessarily getting what the difference is between the two things. Do you know what I mean? And being bold enough and brave
yeah,
enough and big enough and serious enough and committed enough and yeah. So I think there is a big difference. I think they're totally different mediums, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why TV loves to parody movies, you know, because there's something sort of essentially pompous about films.
yeah,
But they do actually need, it is necessary for films to be pompous, really, in a funny way, because they've got to be authoritative enough to make you leave the house.
Yeah.
Whereas comedy is like in your front room, so it can be just a bit more down at heel. Do you know what I mean? And Britain's full of like comedians like doing themselves down and being self-effacing and being cynical and sarcastic and iconoclastic, you know, knocking down pompous things. Whereas actually movies do have to be a little bit kind of self-serious to have the authority to get you to believe in them. And then the ones that work are like, oh fucking hell, that thing's amazing. Because it has that sense of self-importance that maybe you know British comedy struggles to do because everyone's too self-effacing. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So I'm saying if you want to get into film, be a little bit pompous. Seems to be what I'm saying. I don't know whether that's right. There's some truth in that, isn't there, somewhere?
yeah, well, I found union.
Yeah, that's what Josh found at uni
I
to do.
Oh,
Film.
what people who are into film are more pompous.
yeah,
But like look at a Chris Nolan film like he's an absolute genius. He's a master and people take his films so seriously. You go to a Chris Nolan film, look at the audience and it's like they're sitting a physics exam. They're like, "Oh my God, this is so complicated and sophisticated." there's nary a joke to be found,
Yeah.
you know, in a Chris Nolan film. They're not, you don't laugh, do you really? Like, and there you go, case in point, and it works incredibly well because people want that sort of aloof authority and grandness from a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I have seen film and it's not right. Funny.
So he's actually written a film and he says he finds it impossible to not write it funny.
Listen, there's so many brilliant, funny films, and I'm not saying that it's impossible for films to be funny, but your question was what's the difference? And I think that is one of the differences, kind of. And it really, like that. I guess that's why comedy movies are the hardest thing to do, really. Like weirdly, they get the fewest awards, and they don't get the respect. But actually, they're like Spinal Tap or like a classically funny movie is the hardest thing to do in the world. But even something like Spinal Tap is really bold and brave and ambitious, creating a whole world, creating a set of characters, like making a whole mock documentary. So maybe I'm just talking about ambition. You can't be afraid of ambition when you make a movie. Like Edgar making a zombie apocalypse movie and combining it with basically quite down at heel British suburban life, student life. That's a combination of massive ambition and like sort of a sort of humble British aesthetic. But there is a big like scoop of ambition in it, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm saying.
One of your first TV vehicles was on the Channel 4 show Takeover TV. What do you remember about that show?
Gosh, I remember everything, Your Honor. I remember it all. What do you want to know? I mean, it was weird. I was working as a runner in a film production company. I was working on a movie called Blue Juice, like a British surfing movie with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Ewan McGregor. And then at the weekend, me and Adam were making stupid videos. And then he answered an advert in the New Musical Express, put there by Channel 4 for this show Takeover TV. Do you have any like weird home videos, funny home videos? And he sent off a bunch of stuff that he'd done on his own and some stuff that we'd done together. And he got the call to host a series of it. And then he called me and said, "Will you help me out with some of these things, with some of the links? Like I need someone to help me out." And I was like, "Well, this is a show featuring it had a talking bottom in it, right? Do you remember that? It had a guy who lay on his side and opened and closed his buttocks and put lipstick around his anus. He was called Norman Sphincter. So I was like, wait, is this really like I'm working on films? I'm working on exciting British surfing movies, and you want me to help you out with a late night Channel 4 program featuring a talking anus? Yes, I'll do it. So I was like behind the camera on a lot of his links and helping him, like, kind of helping him write them, I guess. I don't remember that clearly. And then yeah, and that was just in his flat in on Brixton Hill. And we were setting up the lights and just doing stupid rubbish, and yeah, so I do. It was fun, but it was kind of weird. I didn't know quite what I was doing or what we were doing or whether this was the right thing to be doing or yeah, we just at that point didn't know what it would lead to if or whether it would lead to anything. It felt quite sort of good though to actually be making stuff
Yeah.
and getting it on telly. And weirdly, people like Avid Marion and Edgar and Garth Jennings and Nick Goldsmith from Hammer and Tongs and Graham Norton and this big list of people who went on to have a presence in the industry started out sending stuff into that show. It was a very brilliant commissioner called Peter Grimsdale at Channel 4 who was actually head of the religious department. But the department briefs were so broad in those days at Channel 4 that that religion meant any sort of personal belief. So if you were passionate about making videos, that sort of counted as a religion.
Right.
So he were, and for a period, Osh, and then he commissioned the Adam and Joe show, and for a period, the entertainment department were like really jealous of him because he was creating this really interesting underground stuff, and
Mm.
they were doing like what was that show with Ian Lee and Daisy Donovan? 11 o'clock show, which was sort of struggling a bit to find its identity. But he still is and was a very clever guy, Peter Grimsdale, or certainly very imaginative and daring.
Yeah.
I no, even with the one.
He knows Ian really well.
Yeah, Ian's a lovely guy, great guy. He's very good on Adam's podcast. But I think Ian was. Not sure how well they supported Ian on that show. But that's another subject. Ian's a very talented, clever guy.
Mm. Britain has enjoyed a long history of successful double acts from Morecambe and Wise to Vic and Bob. What was it about your relationship with Adam which made you realise you could offer something different?
I don't think we realized we could offer something different. We were doing this stuff and we were given the opportunity to put it on telly. So we just sort of kept doing it. And so like it sort of happened the other way around. Did you know what I mean? Has that happened to you? You're sort of doing something and then an opportunity comes along to expose your work to people and you just sort of carry on doing it and think yourself lucky. So, I mean, we knew we were really, really good friends, and Adam's really fucking funny. As you know, his voices are amazing. His just ability to take the piss out of stuff is amazing. And we just made each other laugh all the time. And when you're at school together, your friends are your life raft, aren't they? That's what's getting you through the day. That's how you're surviving. And the comic strips we drew when we weren't paying attention in class and just, living for the moment the lesson ended and you got 6 minutes walking between classrooms to talk bollocks to each other. That's all it was. So it was just that. And suddenly it's like, oh, you mean we'll actually be paid? We weren't paid very much. We were like not very much at all on takeover TV, but they were cheaper days. I think they were days when you could rent a flat a bit cheaper and that sort of stuff. So just to be paid anything for putting a camera in front of our nonsense was sort of incredible.
Yeah.
And when that first show went out, I remember we had a little party in Adam's flat when the first episode of the Adam and Joe show went out, and it was completely surreal. Like I thought it was a prank. I thought someone had just like plugged a VHS into Adam's telly and was just playing back our home videos on the telly and pretending that it was on TV. I really couldn't conceive that it was actually on telly.
Yeah.
And when adverts came up, and when the continuity announcer said, and now a new late night show featured it's from a bedroom in Brixton. It's the Adam and Joe show. It was utterly, utterly surreal that it would actually be going out on telly.
Oh,
So there was never any point in which we were like mega confident and felt like we'd earned it.
kind of took you by surprise.
It did, yeah.
In 1996, you landed your own Channel 4 show. In the era of Britpop movement, what sort of motivation was there amongst the comedy community of the time to reflect the social rebellion that Britpop had sparked?
Wow. Wow, Josh. This is a serious, serious question. Say it again. It's so serious, I don't really understand it. To reflect the social, like, did we feel we were like part of the Britpop thing? Is that or
In the era of Britpop
Yeah.
movement, what sort of motivation was there amongst the comedy community of the time to reflect the social rebellion that Britpop had sparked?
social rebellion? Um, I don't know. I think we always felt outside of all of that. Because we always didn't really like it. we were quite polite middle class boys. We didn't like it when people stormed out of Nevermind the Buzzcocks. We didn't like it when people took cocaine and had fights. We would just wanted everyone to be nice. And I suppose if anything, even when we parodied stuff, we would always say, okay, well, we're really working hard on this parody. We're like spending ages making the toilet from Train Spotting out of cardboard. Like the hours we've put into exactly replicating, Renton snorting sherbet.
Yeah.
Even though we're taking the piss out of Train Spotting, we're respecting it by making the effort to match it as exactly as possible. Because we never wanted to be sort of come across as lazy or like complacent if we possibly could.
Yeah.
So if anything, I think we were slightly maybe kicking against all that. But I certainly think maybe the punkiness of the show was part of that, and that's probably more down to Peter and Channel 4 and the commissioners, to give us that opportunity. It's pre-YouTube.
Yeah.
And really, we were doing all the stuff that people do on YouTube now, like pranks and songs and little reviews of toys and stuff. Um, Again, that stuff sort of you can see that in retrospect, but at the time we were just floundering around trying to think of stupid crap. But I'd love nothing more than to be part of a serious analysis of 90s culture. I think we both really enjoy that. Did you ask Adam these questions?
Yeah,
What did he say?
yeah, you have
So, so you'll have to find out.
Oh, you tease. I bet he said exactly the same.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I bet he said we didn't feel we were part of all that. And I bet he said that we were too nice. I hope he did anyway.
But when you look back, no, to him, it was yeah, in big thing. Okay.
When you look back on it, do you think it was
Well, shiny.
or do you think it was one part of the same?
Yeah.
Say that again. Do I think it was
One part of the same.
one part of the same?
No,
What do you mean, me and Adam?
no, no, everything, uh, that, honey,
Everything at that time.
Oh, I see. I don't think anybody in those. I think it's always that thing of looking back on something and suddenly it forms into a sort of comprehensible moment, doesn't it? But at the time, it's just. I mean, we were definitely reacting against stuff like TFI Friday and that sort of culture, I suppose. Like Adam did a funny parody of TFI Friday with Star Wars toys. I did Jerry Springer, and so we were reacting. We were watching all that stuff from reacting, and we were reacting to the movies at the time. And I suppose we were trying to be a voice of people of the consumer rather than the producer. Like the Adam and Joe show was usually just responding to pop culture. It was like supposed to be you guys. If anybody had been given a TV show, it was supposed to be, well, what do normal people think about this weird shit that's being thrown to them?
Yeah.
So yeah, the point of the show was to react to the minutiae of pop culture. But maybe by parodying all that stuff, we sort of looked a bit like it, I suppose. I don't know.
The 90s was a great time of optimism for the country, which was a stark contrast to the previous decade. With this in mind, how did your generation go about finding the funny in a nation of optimism?
You're talking about the sort of Blairite
Yeah.
um thing.
Yeah.
Optimism. Yeah, I don't. I mean, again, I kind of think we were just always reacting to stuff. So we would make a series that would take ages, and then we would deliver it, and it would go out, and then we would just go back to watching stuff, reading stuff, watching TV, watching movies. And then if something had a real impact, like Titanic would come out, we'd bank it and we'd go, okay, all right, we better do Titanic. We better do show. Oh, fucking hell, have you seen Showgirls? We better do Showgirls. Or whatever it was. I mean, that was the first series. Things that had a real impact or things that we just couldn't quite believe existed. We would go, oh, that would be great to do. That would be great to do with the Star Wars toys. Oh, look at all these like at Christmas, we go, God, look at all these weird VHS box sets where you're getting these bizarre little like freebie things with them. Like that would be funny if you had a train spotting one that came with a crack spoon or like so we'd always just be looking for trends, I suppose, and looking for stuff that really stood out that we could parody. Or, what were we going to do with Bad Dad? Where could we take Bad Dad? Like, okay, like the Ibiza seems to be a huge thing and DJs in the club scene. Let's take Bad Dad to Ibiza, like stuff like that. So we were always just reacting to what was going on. I mean, I think the thing that's really maybe the answer to your question, it's a bit like the other question, is like it's sort of amazing that we got the chance to do it. Like, would our show exist now? No, because YouTube, because all that stuff is now on YouTube. But would something like that even be commissioned at that level? The first bit of press we ever got in the Evening Standard, the headline was the cheapest TV show ever. And looking back on it, I realize how little we were paid. And especially working in film now, where it's all to do with the economy of scale, like how much does your idea cost to do? How much can it potentially make?
Yeah.
Like it's all to do with having the right idea at the right cost for the right return.
Yeah.
I realize now in retrospect that our show was fucking cheap to make because
Yeah.
we did everything. Like we had one editor, a production assistant. That was it. In the first series, we didn't have an editor even.
Hmm.
And by the fourth series, maybe we had a couple of runners or whatever, but we would genuinely light it and make all the models. So it was just really cheap. But
Yeah.
even so, I just don't think it would be. I don't think it would be on now. Or I don't know. Maybe it would. Maybe it's coming back around now that I watch these podcasts. Like The Rest Is Politics just goes out on Channel 4 now, doesn't it? Just two blokes in headphones in a room. Like things are actually getting really cheap again because the BBC's budgets are being slashed so much. They just film their podcasts, don't they, and put them on. So maybe something like our show should come back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
You're saying no, no, don't let the show come back on television. Don't put it back on television.
more it was like in lockdown.
Hmm.
Everyone lockdown.
Yeah, when you think back to how it was during lockdown, every show was almost like that anyway.
Yeah,
It was all
yeah,
very
I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you find two idiots stupid enough to do all that stuff these days, I don't know. You probably would. You'd probably find a million idiots like us. Probably could have at the time as well. Just lucky.
Is it true that you once asked Jules Holland how long his typical wanking session was?
I don't think I did. Where have you got this from? I don't think I did. I mean, it's the sort of thing that we might have said.
Yeah.
Like,
Boy, I remember it.
You remember it?
really? Well, you remember me specifically, not Adam.
It was a grand.
What was it on? Do you remember what it was on?
It was grand to breathe.
It was at Glastonbury.
Okay, well, that sounds feasible. Yeah, we would probably desperately trying to fill time. Yeah, well, then yes, it is true. I've forgotten the answer though. I wonder how long. Wonder how long it was.
He didn't tell you.
I mean, how long's the average episode of Later with Jules Holland?
Oh.
Because that's like a Jules Holland wanking session, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm only joking. It's an excellent show. We said all sorts of terrible things on that Glastonbury coverage. I don't know. I don't have VHSs of it, but there's bits and bobs on the internet. You know, that's the bit where I famously made a big faux pas with Rolf Harris, and had to like apologize to him and all that stuff. But yeah, we said all sorts of terrible things. I mean, that's another 90s thing. Like there was definitely so what they now call sort of lad culture, right? I think we were definitely affected by that in terms of we felt that more things were permitted then than they were now. And you could be more rude and sweary and gross, and like there was a bit of sort of competition to be the most sort of authentic in terms of how crass you were. I think we were definitely swept up in that. Sometimes I look at interviews with us, like now I've got a daughter. I look through my old magazines with interviews with us and go, nah, that's going in the recycling because some of the things we say are kind of, we're just trying to impress people. We're trying to be sort of
Yeah.
laddie and like say the sort of thing we think we should be saying in loaded magazine, whatever. And it's a bit embarrassing to look back on. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think everyone's a bit too uptight and conservative and paranoid now, and that it was better to be a bit looser. But then other times I think, oh God, some of it was just kind of like just juvenile.
Do you you would ask me what around yeah.
Do you think you and Adam would be allowed to do that sort of thing now?
Uh, what on telly?
Yeah.
I don't know. What sort of thing? Ask Jules Holland how long his wanking sessions were. Build a whole show out of that. Just ask him again and again and again and again. Or
Yeah.
ask all sorts of celebrities. Celebrity wanks. It'd be a very visually clean show. There'd just be conversation. It'd probably be a very healthy program about masturbation, celebrity masturbation. I think it's about time celebrities talked about that subject, and it was the stigma was taken away.
Me too.
uh, I don't know. I don't know. Well, listen, let's put a pitch together and see whether anybody bites. Surely there's some sort of channel on Freeview that does that kind of shit. One of those ones where you press it and it goes, "You are now leaving terrestrial broadcasting and going onto the internet. This content is no longer regulated." Do you ever press those ones late at night and you end up on some awful right-wing nonsense? Well, you should try it. Go into the high double figures on Freeview. You get some weird shit.
Yeah, we'll do that tonight.
All right.
Well, he will. You can't use the remote.
Well, that's probably better for you in the long run. Can you smash it with your foot?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you need then. Just smash it with your heel and see what happens.
Yeah, well,
It's probably a better way to select your viewing than actually just going from 1 to 90, which is what most people do. Most people, isn't it? Most it takes an hour just to get from 1 to 90, and then that's the evening's viewing done.
yeah.
Not watching anything. Hmm.
Why do you think film remains the obvious ambition for the stereotypical TV comedy star?
Do you think it does? I don't know. I think maybe less so because of streaming. I don't know, but I suppose in the old days it was because it had more permanence, and movies would come out on video and DVD, whereas TV would just sort of evaporate, was more ephemeral, and film was international, and telly was more parochial. And I guess these days it still has that sort of sense memory, and that's still true to an extent. But streaming has changed that, hasn't it? Like Adam and Joe show, you can still get it on all four. Um, and weirdly, movies are a bit more displaced, aren't they? Because it might be on one
Yeah,
service or not a service. So that is changing a little bit. And certainly in the last 5 years, it's been, oh, you should be making episodic television. Like that's the thing that's where all the quality stuff is. So maybe that's changing. But in the old days, it definitely used to be a status thing, didn't it? Like movies had more status.
Yeah.
And it was always, oh, when are Ant and Dec gonna cross over into movies? Like it's the next step, it's the next step on the ladder.
Yeah.
And oh, Ant and Dec are doing an alien autopsy movie. This is it. And then Uh, but yeah, that definitely used to be the way. I'm not sure it is the way anymore necessarily. Um, I do, really love movies for the reasons I described earlier. I think just because they stand alone
Mm.
and they end, they've got sort of a specialness like a novel or, so I still think that's true for a good movie. But it's definitely also to do with technology and distribution and the place they take in the culture because of the way the medium is distributed, which has changed.
Yeah.
Do you think it's still the thing people want to do? Make a movie? Do you think that's the ultimate thing?
yeah,
Kind of is, isn't it? Like someone like Coogan who couldn't get more brilliant on TV, like he ascends. He was in the new Joker film the other day, so he sort of ascended into the movies. It makes you immortal. It's like becoming immortal. You're mortal on television. I'm not saying these things are true. I'm just toying with ideas. But that's sort of how it felt, didn't it? Like, I don't know.
I, oh, I think it's a shame when the South can't bring
But he thinks it's a real shame when TV comedy stars get too big for TV.
What you think that,
yeah,
Josh, or do I think that?
yeah,
No, that's what
right,
Josh thinks. It's just,
Yeah, it's a shame when they get too big for TV.
yeah,
yeah.
right,
What, because you miss their shows, or you just think they're
yeah,
slightly up themselves?
so, right, she,
So someone like Steve Coogan.
yeah, more, yeah, yeah,
But Coogan still does stuff, doesn't he?
yeah, but, I,
His input on his TV stuff was affected by the film.
It's true, but it's when he does like a series, it's an event for
yeah,
me anyway. Like it's
yeah,
amazing. Like and it actually raises my levels of excitement when he does something on TV because it feels so special. And when he does a book or an audio book, it feels really special just because the quality is so high, you know. Like there's a guy called I always think of a guy called Takeshi Tikano, right? Who does is that what he's called? The Japanese star that does that crazy show. Is that what he's called? With everybody doing the big obstacle course where they all run and jump and they all got knocked out one by one. Do you remember that?
Takeshi's Castle.
Takeshi's Castle, yeah. So he's a massive movie star. And
no,
he's also hosts this crazy TV show. So he does it all. And he's been going since the 70s in Japan. So he's this sort of icon on the big screen. think he directs as well and acts, and he also does all these variety shows on Japanese TV. So it is possible to do it all, I think. And like it's fun to do it all, I think.
Hmm.
I think Steve Coogan's a pretty cool example, really, of keeping it all going. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Plus, here's the terrible truth is probably to do with the economics as well, slightly, in that you get paid more to make a film than you do to make a TV show. So, and everyone's got to you pay the rent. So if these opportunities come. You probably take them.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
How did your extensive knowledge of film help you make waves within the industry?
Ah, yes. Well, I don't know. It's it's the same as like it's if that's like how did my extensive knowledge of shit television help me make waves in television? It's like we just were lazy and watched loads and loads and loads of stuff. But then crucially, we stopped becoming lazy and actually made stuff. Like it's all very well being lazy and watching stuff, but eventually the key is to actually then write something or make something. Uh, so yeah, we were always avid consumers. The school Adam and I went to was like it next to Westminster Abbey. So we would bunk off school and go up to Leicester Square and watch movies all the time, or go to the arcades, or like go to Adam's house and watch telly together. But then crucially, we would then make a spoof of it on video, or like draw a comic strip, or write a stupid sketch or something. So we were always consuming and outputting, and we were always doing the same with film, really.
Hmm.
And I went to film. Adam went to art school. I went to film school, and I did all the like screenwriting courses and stuff. And but then got really blocked because I did all these like Robert McKee and all these super academic screenwriting courses that made it feel like a physics lesson, and I couldn't. I was always trying to write to these formula,
Yeah.
and it really blocked me. And then actually working with Edgar saying, "Oh, do you want to write this treatment for Ant-Man?" Like years and years ago, Edgar sort of taught me just to push through and not to be just to forget all that screenwriting theory stuff and just to pour stuff onto the page. Um, yeah, so it was more of a sort of random kick bollock scramble, really, for me, and a series of lucky breaks. Basically, my whole life has been defined by short, hairy men. Edgar Wright and Adam Buxton both both helped me massively. One in TV and radio, and the other in film.
Oh, yeah, kids, grip money and and I would say help. Oh,
You wrote a script.
yeah. I did degree
Oh, you did a degree, sorry.
in grip money.
Oh, you did it. He did a degree in script writing.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it helped me.
Yeah,
Oh,
so he did a degree in script writing. He wouldn't say it helped him at all.
no, I think it's easy to get that. They call it paralysis through analysis, don't they? Like you get so analytical that it stops your ability to actually for the ideas to flow,
yeah,
because every time they come out of your brain, you're putting them through this academic filter. And I think it's really important to learn to switch all that self-editing off and just let it out, just spew onto the page, metaphorically speaking. Still have that bit of your brain, but apply it afterwards.
yeah,
So you just look at all the splurge and go, okay, well, that vaguely resembles a first act. That looks a bit like a turning point. That looks like a low point of act two. That
yeah,
looks like a catharsis. So have these little rules, but do not let them, make sure the cart doesn't lead the horse. make sure the horse of creativity and freedom and enjoyment and pleasure, and so it doesn't become a chore. Edgar used to say that a lot. Oh, it shouldn't be a chore. Like whatever you can do to make it fun, like put on music or it's always that moment when you're just sitting down at the start of the day, isn't it? And you boot the computer up and everything is like, oh, what's on? I wonder what's on telly. Oh, who's that outside the window? Oh, I wonder what's happening on this website. Or oh, have I checked the Guardian or whatever it might be? And it's getting over that moment and just putting the blank page and just writing something, anything, just writing anything and keeping it going. That's what you've always got to be able to do. And then after you've written, do the do the academic stuff. But I don't think that's a waste of time taking those courses at all. I think all that stuff is really useful, but it's always got to be balanced with freedom and the ability just to splurge and not be self-critical. I reckon. I don't know.
What were your first impressions of Edgar Wright?
Wonderful glossy hair, very lovely facial hair that used to change. Um, like very self-confident, like very, very confident in his own abilities. And just really, the thing about Edgar is he's really in love with it all, and he knows everybody. He's like, I don't know quite how to put this, but he's like, there's no he's one of the most generous people I've ever met. He's just incredibly generous with his friendship. He's generous in casting. He's generous in sharing his ideas. He's generous in listening to other people's ideas. He's just incredibly generous, and he sort of his genius always involves everybody, you know. Um, and he's always in touch with everybody and going to every party and seeing every movie and doing every Q&A and working incredibly fucking hard and having 1,000 ideas. He's just like this fountain of sweets that he's handing out to. That sounds a bit creepy, but he's just like this. He's just really, really generous and just innately brilliant. He's that thing, also that thing of when you've got talent, if you've got talent, you've probably got talent, and you don't need to it's the same thing as splurging stuff onto a page. There's a point at which you shouldn't actually have to work that hard, that you should just let it flow. Do you know what I mean? So he really taught me just to believe in my own ideas. He'd just go, yeah, man, that's great, man. Keep going, is what he'd say. Don't stop, don't stop. And those are two really key words, especially when you're writing. Don't stop. And also finish things. Yeah, don't stop, finish it, don't stop, do it. That's the very important voice to have. And he's just very generous. And he's like us, been doing it, to a higher level, but been doing it since he was very young. He made Spaced he was making Spaced when we were making the Adam and Joe show, and he's younger than us. Yeah.
In 2015, Adam started his own podcast and you became a regular contributor. How do you think your type of comedy is the perfect complement to this podcast format?
Well, we did a podcast together for a long time at XFM and Six Music. So, he and I weirdly were doing podcasts together. Like we like took over from Ricky and Carl at XFM, and they're like the progenitors, aren't they? They're like the year zero of podcasting. So we're like very nearly year zero of podcasting. Like we were doing it since the early noughties, right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know the exact date, but something like that. Maybe the mid noughties or something. Quite a long fucking time ago now. So you know, Adam's, I don't know how many podcasts Adam and I did together, not as many as he's now done on his own. But I think we liked that format because we're control freaks and it meant we could do the closest thing we'd ever done before to the TV show. Like we struggled after the Adam and Joe show ended because it was very difficult to get that control over the content in any other format. Like where else could we possibly do that kind of shit? We couldn't find our niche because everything else felt like relinquishing control to other people, and that made us feel weird and unstable. And radio, particularly even live radio, you know, you got the music, you got to watch your language and stuff like that. So even that felt pretty good, but it still felt a bit controlled. But podcasts at that point, we could pretty much do what we were doing on the Adam and Joe show, like talk bollocks and make funny jingles and do songs. And so it was the closest we found to that format. And actually, we always did audio stuff. When we couldn't get hold of a video camera, well, that's what we would do. We would just get a cassette tape and we do audio sketches and make fake radio plays and record songs with our friend Zach. So we were always doing audio stuff. So again, it just felt like a continuum of that same output. And I find Adam's current podcast very disappointing. I think they just feel there's just something missing from them. And that thing is me. The ones I really like are the Christmas ones. That's when I feel it really comes together. Like he does some stuff with Louis Theroux that feels close, but it just even that feels like a pale imitation. The Christmas ones are the only ones that for me really fully satisfy. The rest of them are getting there, but they'll always be missing a certain je ne sais quoi. Jesus Christ. Yeah, you're saying yes. I can tell you're agreeing with everything I'm saying.
So again. Does it feel like he's having an affair?
With himself.
Oh, with Louis Theroux. Does it feel?
Does it feel like he's having an affair? No, not really. I kind of enjoy the fact that they're both doing podcasts. I kind of think, thank God I'm not in that. Thank God I'm not bound up in that. Because we were always quite competitive, Adam and I, even within our own thing, in a healthy way. You know, I try and make a better toy movie than him, or in Song Wars, we used to do this thing called Song Wars where we'd write songs and play them on the radio, and the audience would vote for which one was better. And we genuinely wrote them individually, and there was a genuine sense of competition on who would win. And there was some of that in the Adam and Joe show because we had to separate off to make enough stuff to fill the shows. We had to go, okay, you do Titanic, you do TFI Star Wars or whatever. So there'd always be a bit of a sense of competition. If a review said, oh, the so and so last night was fantastic, Adam would always go, oh, that's Joe's. Or I'd go, oh, yeah, that's Adam's. Like that.
Yeah.
Where is this going? So anyway, yeah, so now that he and Louis have ended up sort of making competing podcasts, even though Louis is sort of always very, you know, he's Adam makes his podcast completely independently, whereas Louis always has the backing of some behemoth broadcasting organization, like Louis is the sort of I think it's like there's a movie where the really sort of suave rich guy comes in on his like super cool car going hello, you know, sort of Terry Thomas or something, and then Adam's the sort of jalopy with the like homemade thing going you know, he Adam's the little engine that could, and Louis the sort of slick kind of billionaire like so I enjoy like watching that rather, and I'm pleased that I'm not involved in it. And it's lovely to do it. It's lovely to be able to do it every Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, God, that felt like quite an involved answer. I got overexcited. Sorry.
That's okay. Later this year, you and Adam are set to reunite at the Royal Festival Hall for the Christmas recording of the Adam Buxton podcast. How do you think your chemistry has endured over the years?
I don't know. You tell me. It's really good fun getting together with him, and it always depended like what mood we were in, or whether one of us was upset about something. Like sometimes that would bleed into the shows. Like you could probably tell that, oh dear, they've had a bit of an altercation about something. It's just like any old friendship, you have spiky days or days when you're feeling sensitive or um but where we usually behave ourselves in front of an audience, like on live radio or in front of an audience, we behave ourselves. It's got better. Did you ask Adam this question? I bet you I give exactly the same answer, which has actually got better because we're not cohabiting anymore work-wise. It's quite a thing to have a friendship and then make a living from it. It's very weird. It's like being in a band. It's like suddenly your livelihood is at stake and your relationship is tied to your livelihood. So it's like a marriage or being in a band. So it causes all these weird stresses. But that's no longer the case. So I think it's a bit more relaxed between us because we have sort of independent things we're doing.
Yeah.
I think.
It's a bit like when you meet with I rough sex.
Uh-oh.
Is it like meeting up with an old girlfriend but without the rough sex?
Uh, Maybe. I don't know. I've been in a relationship for many, many years. I don't do a lot of meeting up with old girlfriends. Sometimes it is. Like, so the other day I was staying with a bunch of friends in Norfolk, with lots of other families, and it was quite near where Adam lives. So we invited Adam and his wife over, and we had a dinner party. And I was sitting opposite Adam, and we were chatting about the festival hall thing. We were chatting about what we're going to do for the Christmas show, and I was saying to Adam, "Listen, man, I think we should do like we shouldn't just do a live one. We should do one like a normal one when we're together, because people really like those. Plus, I've had a lot of messages on my Instagram of people saying they prefer like normal podcasts to live podcasts. And I went to my Instagram and I started reading out messages, and I read out one that was just like, God, I really hate the live podcast. It's so cringe, or something I read out. And I immediately remembered, oh no, I shouldn't do that. Adam does not like hearing random negative comments because they can really upset his karma. They can really fuck him up for a week. One thing one random person says. We had a famous thing on it, not famous between us on XFM when while a record was playing, I read out comments from a viewer saying, "Why don't you cunts just shut the fuck up and play more music?" And that and that completely derailed Adam, and we had a huge argument. He got furious with me. Um, and even though that was like 20 years ago or something, at that dinner party, I was like, oh dear, I think I did it again. So there's definitely little sore spots that I should really know better and have got better at avoiding. Um, but other than that, I think it's all very it's all really nice between us.
Good.
What the day?
Say that again.
What the day?
Oh, what, the Royal Festival? Oh, what's the date for the Royal
Oh,
Festival?
the date is I think it's December the 5th. We're doing two shows on Christ. I got to prepare something. December the 5th. Yeah, December the 5th. Thursday, December the 5th at the Royal Festival Hall.
One of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make a note of that.
Yeah, you're very welcome to come if you want. We'll sort you out with tickets.
I
Well, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, he said he would love that.
Cool. Well, we will sort you out with tickets. Drop me an email. Just
Cool.
don't get angry if it's rubbish.
Just tell Adam.
No, exactly. Blame Adam.
Looking back at your career, what's your proudest achievement?
Well, I think probably the first film I made, probably. I mean, yeah, probably, because it was, I mean, just in a selfish way, because it was sort of all me. But but I don't know. I've proudest. Um yeah, I don't kn really know about that. Like I'm proud of everything, really. I think it's all sort of amazing. Like if you told me when I was like 18 or 19 that I'd end up having the opportunity to do the things I've been able to do, I think half of me wouldn't have believed you, and probably half of me, like an arrogant little twat, would have gone, "Well, that's not good enough. Why haven't you done better?" Like, why haven't you made more films? It's a stupid television show with a talking anus. Come on, you can do better than that. But then I think the more, maybe that's what like the 16-year-old me who knew fuck all about the world, that's what they would have thought. But then like the 22-year-old me that was working in Tower Records in Piccadilly and thinking, I am never gonna do, how the fuck do you get into this industry? Would go, oh my God, I can't believe that we actually did something. So I don't think pride comes into it really. It's just sort of a feeling of relief. Yeah. Retrospective relief.
But what's next for Joe Cornish?
Well, I'm not sure. Like I'm working on a bunch of film projects, and so hopefully another film next year. And yeah, and then obviously the Royal Festival Hall thing. And I've got quite a lot of stuff happening, but I don't like to jinx it by talking about it. A, because I'm superstitious. Like B, I'm sure you're the same because you sort of don't want to expose it to oxygen yet in case they go funny. And C, because if you talk about things and every time someone else interviews you, they go, and what's happened to this? And what about that? And what about that? And then you have to go into great detail about various reasons why things never happened. So yeah, but I'm lucky. I've got a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah, so what a great way to end.
Well, thank you very much. Good questions.
It's been
And yeah, well done. It's a good partnership you guys have got. How long have you guys been working together?
well, Josh and I have only been working together for 7 months.
Really?
Yeah.
That's brilliant the way you can sort of what would the word be like channel what he's saying and understand clearly what
Yeah.
Josh. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
It took me a good 3 or 4 weeks to get to a point where I felt comfortable enough to sort of know what he was going to say.
Yeah. It's amazing. And can you type, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
thing he types on
All the emails are you. So you do absolutely everything apart from the direct verbal communication.
everything's him.
Mom. No.
Yeah, he types. He's got his iPad here. He types with his nose.
Wow, amazing. And you've got an amazing roster of previous guests.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah, fantastic.